Professional cycling is experiencing a new Manzano case 20 years on, following the recent collapse of a rider racing in high temperatures, an event that has shrunk the hearts of all cycling fans. You're seeing it in the images right now. It's 29-year-old Mauricio Moreira from Uruguay, in the middle of the Volta Portugal. Now, what matters most of all is that the rider is well and stable after spending the day in hospital. Your Uncle Cycling Highlights wishes you a speedy recovery. Never forget that. But obviously those of us who've been watching cycling for decades know that cases like this, or that of the doping-sanctioned Michele Gazzoli this year in the middle of the Tour de France, they're not normal. These are not simple cases of COVID or heatstroke. Moreira, a time trial specialist who tries to climb with the best and has been based in Portugal for 4 seasons, in some ways, he's the living representation of Portuguese cycling, always at the limits like Tony Montana. Collapsing 16 years after the death of Bruno Neves, in full competition after he was treated by Dr. Marcos Minar with some rich nutritional supplements. This is the background of Mauricio Moreira. Now subscribe to the channel for more cycling content, and now let's travel back in time. 44 years. Now then, a very young 19-year-old cyclist, Federico Moreira, also known as Fefo, made his debut in professional cycling in Uruguay and enjoyed a very long career, one which led him to conquer 6 Vuelta a Uruguay, 3 Ruta de America, and then he retired at 45 years of age in purest Horner style. To put this in a little context, this Uruguayan cycling legend made his debut in cycling while Eno was at his zenith, and he retired after Low-Cost Lance had won 7 Tour de France. The problem is that Fefo's best moment, in 1991, during the Vuelta a Uruguay that he won, he tested positive for doping for nicotinamide, a nasty stimulant. How then could he continue with his career, even competing in the Barcelona 92 Olympics? The story is hilarious. Fefo had good contacts from politicians such as the mayor of his city, Eduardo Minuti, or even technicians like Alejo Blanco, who signed a TUE for Tavagil. Now, between all of them, they managed to persuade the Uruguayan Olympic Committee to ignore that positive for doping, and they deceived the UCI by some kind of formal sleight of hand of process. You see, the laboratories where the anti-doping tests of the Vuelta Uruguay were made were not expressly overseen and supervised or even approved by the UCI itself, and so, despite having tested positive for doping, the rider from Salto could not be sanctioned. Fefo became a myth, Federico the Great, capable of doping and being clean at the same time. A guy with such good contacts in Uruguayan cycling that he managed to become president of the Uruguayan Cycling Federation following his retirement in 2007, all the way up to 2019. Even today, he's a member of the Uruguayan Olympic Committee, the same committee that didn't sanction him in 1991. And he's also a road director for the South American Cycling Union. Why the story of this dinosaur, dear uncle? Well, because this gentleman is the father of Mauricio Moreira, the collapsed cyclist. The same one who received in 2017 the award for Best Uruguayan Athlete of the Year, despite not having won any relevant events at his 22 years of age. However, Dad's good contacts help him to make a debut in Europe, in the risible Caja Rural, where he coincided with his compatriot, Fabrizio Ferrari, yes, and the Portuguese, Rafael Raiz, key figures in his sports career, coinciding in all his professional teams. However, during his first season in Europe, he was unable to shine, for he was surrounded by superstars, like today's Jewish Israel Premier Tech team rider Nick Schultz, or Benesto's Alex Aramburu, or the Wallapop hustler Serrano, and the new friend of the channel, Javier Solá, and Breton rider Christian Rodriguez. 2 seasons packed with DNFs. He only triumphed in one stage of the Boucle de la Mayenne, finishing 2nd overall in this popular French village race. After his contract finished, no professional team wanted a guy who seemed to be dedicated to abandoning almost all of his races, and so he decided to take a step backwards by signing for the Galician team, Bigo Rias Baixas, thanks to a contract introduced to him by Marcos Serrano, the mythical man doped by Ufe Fuentes. Now there, Moreira took the team to unseen heights, sweeping several races of the Under-23 Spanish Cup, winning the Volta a Valencia, the Circuito Guadiana, or the prologue of the Vuelta Zamora, with exhibitions of long-distance attacking. And he soon overcame his problems with weight or any mechanical breakdowns that had hurt him so badly in Caja Rural. Fortunately, thanks to contacts like the aforementioned Rafael Raiz or the mummy of Jaén, Javier Moreno Bazan, he was able to find a place once more in the professional ranks, and not just in any old team. We're talking about FAPEL of Portugal, the same structure where he has spent the last 4 years. Now, FAPEL is one of the most hilarious teams in the history of cycling. Its past is full of strange stories, such as the presence of sanctioned dopers for more than 25 years, like the legendary Nuno Ribeiro, or it's sometimes acted as a dumping ground for the waste products of Dracula Gianetti, riders like David de la Fuente, or Arcaiz Duran, or the legendary doper Raúl Alacon, or that of the trainer of our Slovenian alien Poggi. He took 2 Spanish cyclists there before his big explosion as a top-level coach in 2024. Shortly after his arrival at FAPEL, the team itself signed a rider doped by Ipo, André Cardoso, to teach the youngsters of the Portuguese team all about the special values of small, marginal gains. Moreira had a spectacular first season in Portugal, beating the doper José Neves of the Porto team in the Volta ao Alentejo. That was the same year that Neves was proclaimed Portuguese road cycling champion. He was confirmed as a great rider in Portugal by finishing second in the Volta Portugal, behind the doper Amaro Antunes of Porto, who has been sanctioned. But so far, Moreira, like the doped Zolo Ulrico Berillo did with Lance, well, he hasn't wanted to claim his rightful triumph. This sudden improvement in Moreira's performance can be explained by the medical theories of Dr. Alexander Brandão, seen in these hilarious archive images. This popular surgeon, a cycling lover and specialist in treating various Portuguese cyclists in his clinic, Fortius, became Moreira's right-hand man overnight, and with his care and good treatments, he was able to turn the Uruguayan spoilt boy into a Sputnik. So much so that in 2022 he finally achieved his great dream. After the sanctioning of the entire Porto team for doping, Moreira and FAPEL were at ease in the Volta Portugal, and they walked through. Thanks to the treatments of Dr. Brandão, the histrionic Portuguese team achieved the yellow jersey with Moreira, and then a historic triple in purest Rabobank Vuelta style, with Federico Figueiredo and Antonio Carvalho topping the final podium in Porto. The Uruguayan achieved the biggest milestone in the history of the small South American country, with Dad proudly applauding in tears across the ocean thousands of kilometres away. However, it was the turning point in the career of Mauricio, for then he suffered a truly negative downward 2023. Despite sweeping the Joaquim Agostinho Trophy in a new hat-trick with Figueiredo and former Gazprom rider, yes, Artem Nich, in the Volta a Portugal he failed miserably. Incapable of finishing with the best in the mountains, he only managed to shine in the final time trial with a 2nd place, but at least he helped the ex-Russian to finish in 4th overall. As a result of this, the FAPEL team realised that the wisdom learned by Javier Solar a few years ago and the advice of Dr. Brandão would not be enough, and so they decided to gamble on a new nutritionist for the 2024 season. We're talking about Dr. Pedro Merinos, doctor of the Chinese soccer team, Beijing Guoan, and who had triumphed also as a doctor of Porto, but not of its cycling division, but rather its handball, basketball, roller field hockey and soccer subsidiaries. This doctor, a keen fan of Saunier Duval of the hard-working Almeida, recommended young Moreira to visit a biomechanics expert, Tiago Silva, and the trainer, Pedro Cardoso, of the Combativo Training Centre, where they do those popular VO2 max and lactate tests and train ever so well with them. Very, very fashionable centres, and have been for at least 10 years, and not only by the likes of Solar, but also by former doped cyclists like the Slovenian Brekovic, or those Portuguese that you can see in these pictures with Mauricio Moreira. They trained the Uruguayan in hot conditions and taught him new techniques with optimised positions, and soon Moreira started to feel much, much better. So much so that he even dedicated one of his jerseys to the clinic that had treated the doper Jose Gonçalves since its creation in 2020. Results in small-town races were starting to show, and he was feeling like his best days ever as he headed into the Volta Portugal. Advice from Marineos, Brandao and Thiago Silva had taken Moreira to a new level, and he managed 6th in the Volta Prologue, won by teammate Raiz, and 2nd place to a Dane, because there's always a Dane, Julius Johansson of his own FFL team. Now, he could not beat the client and close friend of Poggi's trainer, Germán Nicolas Tivani, in the first mid-mountain stage of the Volta, for he achieved his first professional victory in 5 years with a histrionic Argentinian double of Aviludo Luletano. He was also unable to hold off Team Burgos' Guatemalan, Sergio Chumil, on the first mountain stage, and he finished behind Jesus Del Pino, a client of the newest fan of this channel. But his hopes were not broken, for he was still in the top 15 on GC, and the 4th stage was his moment. A mid-mountain day, ideal for his characteristics. Trained and treated in heat, with the best possible nutrition. In these times of so many technological advances, we know that those factors go on to break records. But alas, Moreira couldn't finish. He fainted, while his teammate Rafael Raiz finished 2nd behind a 40-year-old mummy, and Sola's close friend and green jersey came in 4th. Portuguese cycling. A clear example of healthy sport, is it not? Oh well, take a look at that video on the screen while you're here. That one there, yes, you will love it.